everyone. Welcome to yet another session on decision analysis for agricultural development. I'm Cory Whitney, and today we're going to talk about how to generate Markdown files in our RStudio environment. And of course, we've already gone over this in the previous seminar, so I'm not going to go into great detail about the general layout and the general functions of this really cool program, the Markdown, but rather to talk about how to use this to generate documents to represent the work that we've done in the R programming language. So so of course we remember we want to open a Markdown file, which is just that default option here. You have sort of a drop down and you can choose from the list depending on which packages you have installed. This list may be longer or shorter, but you can choose from this list. The Markdown, the default settings here, we're just going to create a document, leave it as the default untitled. This may be your name or it may be something else. You can leave that as default as well. And you can choose if you'd like to generate an HTML, PDF, or Word. We can change those options. All of these options can be changed in the document itself once we open it. So we're just going to create create a general document, and we'll hit the OK here instead of the empty document. So hit the OK button. We're just opening an RMD file. So we open this RMD and it has a bunch of default stuff here. We talked about this before. And since we chose HTML, the default output here is an HTML document. Of course, it has my name. The title is untitled, and we can change all of these things in this section, which is called the YAML. We can change whatever we want here. And actually, what I want to show you here just briefly is that we can also add, we'll keep it as an HTML document, and we can add a bibliography to this thing, okay? And in order to add a bibliography, this is really critical because of course, when you're writing about what you've done, you want to add citations to the relevant work so that it's easy for people to follow up. If this is going to be a supplementary material, or if it's even a paper, if you're that brave and strong to write your whole paper or thesis in Markdown, then you're certainly going to have to add citations. So let's start first of all with adding your own citations. So of course, on your machine, you have this space where you've kept all of the files related to this documentation, related to this particular project. On my machine, this is located in a place which are my contributions just in the section called R, and I have here an Rmarkdown template somewhere here in the list. Rmarkdown template. So there are all the files, and I want to create a new folder here that I am going to call bib. Okay, so I'm going to add a bib folder here so that I can always find the references. I can sort of put references here. Okay, so that's step one. I want to have some, you can call it references, you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call it bib. And in this, if I'm going to add my own citations here, generate citations from some kind of a file, then I'm going to have to go with the reference management software. In my case, I use Zotero, some kind of reference management software where you can export something in the form of a bibtext file. So I'm going to invite you all to join this, and I'm going to choose to export these files, these citations from Zotero. So I'm going to export the format bibtext and Unicode UTF-8. I don't know, you could change that if you want, I guess, but it's not that important, just as long as we have a bibtext file. And I'll say, okay, so now I've got a bibtext file, and I can export this to that same folder. So I'm going into R, into Markdown template, or Markdown template. I'm hoping it's here. Markdown template, bib, and then I'll save that file here. I'm going to call it, let's just call it references. Yeah. So So now there's a references bib in this bib folder. Save that. So that's it for Zotero. You'll all be members of this, so you'll have these very same citations in case you want to use them. And what I'll see here in my collection, you may need to, at some point, of course, you need to save. Let's call this example. Let's call this example. Also, just while we're in the process here, I'll call this example, and I'll remove the date. I don't really find it's necessary to have a date in the YAML in this top part of the file. Within these 3 dashed lines, that's your code that represents the format of your document. So here we can add in that bib folder, of course, we have now references.bib. So we can add those. We can add a reference to that here. Now, anything that's in that references list, of course, in the bibtext file, you get this sort of handle at the top of every reference. So we have the Doe Decision 2020. That's the paper we read for this week. Actually, we read it last week, right? And what I can do is I can add a citation to a work in the file using that reference. By putting so I have this reference here, Decision 2020, Ardo Decision 2020, and I can add, let's say, and I can add these square brackets with an @ or I can add, and I can, without the square brackets, right? Now, if I knit this document, the example RMD, you'll see the 2 formats that this comes out as. So it's going to read my bib file because it knows in the YAML, I've told it to look for a bibliography in bib references.bib. And now if I put it in square brackets, read about, let's give it something better. Read about agroforestry in Vietnam. Forestry in Vietnam, right? Or read to learn more about agroforestry in Vietnam. Right, so these are 2 different formats you might add a citation. So it'll look in this bib, it'll look in this references file in this bib folder, and it will look for any bibtext file or any bibtext reference that starts with Doe Decision 2020, and it will print for us in our final document these 2 references, and I can add at the bottom here references, right? And it's going to actually print the bibliography there. So let's knit. And now we see the 2 formats, right? So you see read about agroforestry in Vietnam, in parentheses, Doe, Ludeling, and Whitney 2020, or read Doe, Ludeling, and Whitney 2020 to learn more about agroforestry in Vietnam. So those 2 different formats of citation. And then we have references at the end, and there's our link to that particular paper. So people can find what this, of course, I don't have to tell you about why it's important to add citations, but do add them as much as you possibly can. Make sure it's totally crystal clear where things came from, how you learned about things, how the methodologies that you're following mimic or follow up on previously published work, and where people can look to find out more about what it is that you're doing. So of course, what's super critical in that process is making sure that any R packages that you're using are also cited in your work, right? Because it's fair to those package builders that they get some kind of recognition for their work. So we always try to make sure that we cite all of the academic work, all of the peer-reviewed published papers that we use. But in our methodologies, it's also important if we're using our programming language and if we're using any libraries that we add those libraries to the reference list as well. So in that same bib file, I'm going to add a new list of references, a separate list of .bib references. And the way I'm going to do that is actually to use a trick in the knitter tools. And I'm going to add, it's called knitter write bib. Okay, so I'm going to add a new YAML here, a new knit rather, a new chunk R. And I don't want this to be included either. So I'm going to say include equals false here as well. I'll end that so it's clearly a separate chunk. What's always a good idea actually is to add bib. So this is optional, right? This name in your chunk is optional, as you recall from previous, but it is helpful for you when you're compiling these things, when you knit. It's helpful for you if you add those, then you know. Let's call it add the R bib, because this is just particularly to R. So we're going to call from, of course, we need the libraries. So let's call the library knitter. And let's call also the library, one we use a lot, library ggplot2. Let's actually call decision support, since that's the main library for the course. So we're calling library knitter and library decision support. So I'm going to say, I'm going to use the knitter function, write bib. And I actually have a list, so I'm going to use C, and I'm going to add packages, right? Packages, and then the list is going to be. It's going to contain two. It's going to contain two. That is knitter and decision support. Okay, so we're going to put both of those there. So now we've got our knitter write bib option there. We're using that function. And it's going to look, so we have to tell it where to look, of course, right? So I've got that whole list of packages. And now, what I've actually, this is the function itself. And that has to end there. There's a final, let's break the line to make it clear. And then after this, we have to tell it where to look. So it's obviously going to be in the bib folder. And let's have it automatically add a packages, P-A-C-K. Have it automatically add a file there, a bib file in the bib folder called packages.bib. That's also going to have that. So we have to add that to the YAML as well. We're going to add bib packages.bib. So what we've done is we've told the write bib function to use the packages option to create a list of these packages to sort of, so if you say citation decision support down here, I think that's how it works. There you go. You get this bib file. So it'll extract that using that R function iteratively on all the packages that we list, and it will grab those references. And actually, you'll see here, well, once we knit it, you'll see what that looks like. So it's slightly different from the from a standard bib file. But let's go ahead down here and already add those references. So we can say this was, let's say, models were generated with decision support tools. And then we can, and actually what we need to do is put that same @ symbol, but now it's R minus decision support. Okay, it's going to find that file. Decision support tools, R decision support, yeah. So it's going to find that, it's going to look through that bib file, find everything related to, or any files that are related to decision support, the decision support package. And then it's going to add that citation, this citation here to the list of references. Likewise, we can say this. Let's say this report was compiled using at R minus knitr tools, or let's say using tools from the R minus team. Okay, and this is going to do that opposite citation. So instead of adding this in parentheses, it's actually just going to list the authors and the year in that form, in that citation format style. So again, that's going to find those in the bib file, and it's going to add them to the references. So now if I wrote everything correctly, then when I knit this, it should generate a file with, you see, so here you've got using from the she team, and here you've got decision support tools, Ludwig et al. 2021. And now in our references, we have 3. We have knitr from Yihui Shi, we have decision support from our team, and we have the paper by Dell et al. So that's how you add references to your Markdown file. Please do that as often and as frequently and as thoroughly, let's say, as you can, to make sure there's full documentation of your work. And that's it for this particular session. Thanks very much, and good luck. Let us know if you need anything.